Good morning, StoneBridge. This is Joe Michels. We're here for another Bible study in Romans. Today, we're going to look at Romans chapter 15, and I've gone back to creating my three titles for the lesson. The first title is The Quality of Our Unity. The second is It's Okay to Eat Cheeseburgers. And lastly, get over yourself. The passage Mark taught last week and the passage we're going to look at today have renewed a sense of discomfort that I have enjoyed, if you will, for a long time. For years and years and years, I've held kind of two contrasting ideas about how you should live the Christian life. I knew that all denominations and all faiths and even all churches weren't the same. And I knew there were important differences and unimportant differences. This week I learned that there's actually a church that split over where to place the Lord's Supper table. Geez. If you've been at StoneBridge for the last 10 or 12 years, you may not know what that is, but there's in old churches, there's typically a wooden table right in front of the pastor, right in front of the pulpit, in remembrance of me, that they use for the Lord's Supper. And I believed that I was doing a pretty good job of living the Christian life. I mean, I went to church 47, 48 Sundays out of the year. I taught Sunday school. I even read stuff from people who read and understood Greek and Hebrew so that I could think I understood the Bible more than your average Joe. But all of that brings me to today's passage. In Romans 15, 1 through 3, Paul says, "We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. Each of us should please his neighbor for his neighbor's good, to build his neighbor up. For even Christ didn't please himself, but as it's written, the insults that fell upon you have fallen upon me." Christ saying they've fallen upon him. And for most of my life, I took that passage personally, okay? Me, one who is strong, who follows the rules, shouldn't condemn those who don't follow all the rules like I do. Or in an unprecedented moment of humility, I might think I shouldn't condemn those who follow fewer rules than I do. But Mark's passage from last week caused us to really take a look at this from a different viewpoint, because Paul said the strong Christian is not the one who follows all the rules that we have made up and that society has made up and that theologians have made up. A good example is the Jewish dietary laws. Under Jewish dietary laws, you cannot cause meat or a dairy product to touch each other on the plate while you're eating. Well, the most obvious problem with that is that means no cheeseburgers your entire life. Paul essentially told us last week, hey, cheeseburgers are okay. You can eat whatever you want, but don't eat it in front of someone who's going to think you're a terrible sinner because you've eaten that stuff. So the first thing about this passage is to understand that the strong believer being referred to there is not necessarily the one who follows all the rules and dots all the I's and crosses all the T's. And that just because someone doesn't live up to your standards is no reason to chastise, demean, or attack them because of that. Kent Hughes is one of my favorite commentators, and I steal blindly from his work all the time. And after he made some anecdotal comments about this passage, he wrote, "The quality of our unity either attracts or repels the world." Wow. Paul realized that the schisms that were in the churches were focusing on non-essential stuff and were tearing it up. The Galatian church was torn up by legalism. The Corinthian church split into two camps. What's not really evident from this passage, standing alone, is that a number of scholars believe that Peter and Paul, who were early Christian martyrs, were killed because of an internal division in the Roman church. Wow. They believed that some of the Roman Christians opposed Peter and Paul and turned them in as traitors to Rome, and that's why they became martyrs. So for us to believe the way we live is right and that our doctrine is sound and that we know deep in our hearts that others are wrong, well, what Paul is saying is, yeah, Joe, sure, you may be right and you may be wrong. And the other guys that you know are wrong may be wrong, or they may be right. But neither of you are right or wrong about something that should create enmity or tension between you. Kent Hughes told the story, and I'm going to close the video session with this. He told the story of two small town churches, the First Baptist Church of Winnebago, Minnesota, and the Second Baptist Church of Winnebago, Minnesota. And they realized that they were both struggling, and it really made sense for them to merge and join together. And it would have been a great idea, but they couldn't pull it off. The problem was a deeply held theological issue. One church believed that the Lord's Prayer had to be said, "Forgive us our trespasses." The other church believed it needed to be said, "Forgive us our debts." Well, after the merger failed, a local newspaper published a story about it and explained what caused it and wrote, "So the First Baptist Church went back to its trespasses, and the Second Baptist Church went back to its debts." Well, thank you. We've got more to cover live, and I look forward to talking to you Sunday morning. Bye.